Hi Alessandro, hi Alessandra, hi Aurora.
Hi, hi, nice to meet you.
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much for being here with us in the office.
It's a
I
pleasure.
remember that we probably got in touch on LinkedIn last year, like a couple of years ago, from like some common friends at Stanford. Like you are like doing a barbecue or something, and then
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah, yeah,
they were
yeah.
like talking about Silicon Valley Fellowship and everything. And then from there, like you hosted us at the University of San Francisco, University of California, San Francisco, that there is like a huge center for like biomedical research. So that has been super nice. And even the next month we are gonna return there
Yeah, yeah, I
for the
was
spring
very
batch.
happy to connect with you. I think what you guys are doing is really impressive, honestly, for very young people like Alessandra, Aurora, people that wanna discover Silicon Valley. So
They're coming this summer actually in
yeah,
the
Yes,
July batch.
they're coming.
so it's always a pleasure to host you guys and show you also a bit of biotech in this world of Silicon Valley, which is more about pure AI. So yeah.
In fact, here we wanted to know like something a little bit more about you
Yeah.
and like maybe about your background, your status, how you arrived in the US. So we
Of course,
wanted to
yes.
know.
So by training, I'm a synthetic biologist. I work on cell engineering, DNA engineering. My training is again in molecular medicine. I did a PhD in Raffaele Teletol Institute for Gene Therapy in Milan, Italy. This institute is considered, I would say, one of the top three, top five in the world in gene therapy. Basically, what we do there, gene therapy is a very innovative branch of medicine, which consists in tackling the disease really at the genetic foundation, especially for genetic diseases. There are some kind of diseases that are really caused by a specific gene. So in that case, there's the idea that you can really cure the disease if you modify in the right way, of course, the gene that is involved in the disease. So that's what I did during my PhD in Milan. And then I decided to, let's say, improve and expand also my skills, and that's why I decided to join as a postdoctoral researcher, University of California, San Francisco, in Wendell Lim Lab. Professor Wendell Lim is a pioneer in synthetic biology, which is another branch of medicine which has some connection with gene therapy, because in both cases you work by editing the DNA. While in gene therapy, you edit the DNA because there's a specific gene that you want to correct. In synthetic biology, you edit the DNA of a cell, basically you want to reprogram a cell and making like a biocomputer. So as computer works because you have a code, you have an algorithm that they need to follow, and you program the computer to do that. In our case, what we are trying to do is basically to write a code, which is again a genetic code, insert, deliver this code in the target cell, and then the cell will start to behave like a computer and follow instructions, which are the instructions that we are giving to them. And that's what we consider synthetic biology, at least in our lab. And there are different potential capacity there, because you can imagine that if you're able to reprogram the cell and teach to the cell what to do, when to do, and how to do that, you can have tremendous potential in cancer therapy, for instance. You can program the immune system to recognize cancer specifically in one tissue, for instance. If it's like a code, so the immune cell would behave like, if I detect this cancer in this tissue, then I do that. That's the general promise of synthetic biology. And yes, that's why I'm here. Yeah.
It's extremely interesting. And like, so you decided to do this shift from Italy to San Francisco. So like, why
Yeah.
San Francisco in particular?
Yeah, yeah, of
And
course. So, yeah, sorry.
and
Yeah,
then why San and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
also yeah, the visas and how did you manage to go there?
yeah, yeah, of course. So, why San Francisco? For two reasons, I would say. The first reason, I had already a big background in gene therapy, thanks to my previous professors, Luigi Naldini and Angelo Lombardo in Italy. They trained me about how to edit the DNA, but again, I wanted to learn more about how to fully reprogram a cell. And one of the best scientists in this field is Professor Wendell Lim, who works at UCSF, University of California, San Francisco. So that's one of the two reasons why I came to San Francisco specifically. Another reason is Silicon Valley. So my background in Italy is a fully academic background. I did a master, a bachelor, a master, and a PhD all in the university. And I wanted to explore also a bit the entrepreneurial environment. And we know that Silicon Valley is like the gold place for that. So it's a place where if you have an idea, either from academia, or some people even from a garage, whatever, you can make potentially super innovative companies. And so, yes, I wanted to explore also this kind of environment, learn some kind of skill about that, how to transition, how to learn which kind of things can become innovative startups. And this happened even before ChatGPT. So basically, I made this decision before ChatGPT was launched, and then I arrived here, and everything was going like crazy. So I made the right decision, I would say, in the right time, even a bit before the right time, a bit before there was this kind of tremendous, let's say, release from OpenAI. And then I found out that actually San Francisco was good, not just for synthetic biology, not just for, let's say, startup in general, but also for the AI revolution. So it was like a coincidence, the last thing. Yeah.
And in fact, like we knew that you also were the co-founder of a startup, and maybe do you want to tell us a little bit more about that experience, also the skill? Yeah, but
Yes, and if I can, that happened like during COVID. So you said
Yeah,
that
yes.
in Italy pretty much more about study, but in reality you were also founder of the startup. So we were curious to know, how did you have the skills to start a startup given that you were studying biotechnology?
Yeah. That's a very important point. So the startup is called the Noble Creative Studio. It's a digital media studio. Basically, we provided to clients that were very focused on biotech, so either on technology and science, we were providing them communication tools and service. So whatever you discover and you wanted to advertise, we could provide to you either a web page, a social media editorial plan, illustration, animation. We also did docuseries. I started for there, so it started like again a coincidence. So I've always been interested in science and biotechnology since I was young, but I've always had also a very great passion for entertainment. I was always going to watch movies when I was a kid, and then when I arrived in Milan, during the day I was studying as a PhD student again gene therapy, and during the night really I was studying creative writing, direction, for cinema and also for theater, because Milan, it's maybe not a lot of people know that, but Milan is like the top center in Italy for theater. So I had a lot of incredible mentors there in terms of how to act well, how to write a script, how to do direction. So I had this kind of two interests, one in science and the other in communication and entertainment. I didn't think they were correlated. They were like, for me, were two separate words. Then what happened was one of my professor who is very important, also science communicator, Roberto Burioni. He knew, he was my professor in virology. He knew that I was also interested in communication. And then he said to me, why don't you write some articles for our magazine? He had a magazine, it was called Medical Facts. So my career, let's say, in science communication started thanks to him. So I was starting to write articles with him. And then what happened was COVID. So a lot of people wanted to know what was COVID, what was this new virus, but more importantly, a lot of people want to know what are the risks of the mRNA vaccine. So we had to explain people that there was no risk in genetic modification because of this virus. A lot of people had this concern. We needed to explain that this concern was totally irrational. So we started to write articles about this. And in order to make the thing clear and even simpler, I realized that maybe we could use also not just written text, but also illustration and animations. So that's the moment in which I start to work with some artists, especially a very talented one, Diego Fabri, very, very nice and talented illustrator in Milan. And once we started to put illustration in the articles, we saw that the number of viewers increased virally. That's because people that are not in science and want to learn, for them it's much simpler and more attractive if you also put an illustration or a nice animation. And that's the moment in which I realized that, at least in Italy, there were not so many digital media studio about science. There were a lot of scientific press agency releasing press release, very, very well-written infographics, but there was not a lot about creativity, how to explain this very complex concept in a way that is also aesthetically attractive. And that's how I started the Nambu Creative Studio. At the moment, I didn't have any kind of business experience. I was, again, a PhD student. What I did in that case, and it's something that I really want to recommend to people that are interested in this kind of transition, is to understand what are your strength point. In my case, it was clear my strength point was I knew what was the science there. But also understand what are your weaknesses. Again, in my case, the weakness was I didn't know anything about startup, and work on that. In my case, what worked well was to partner with some friends which had already done startup and they could serve as advisors. So basically, I started to reach some friends in Milan. Again, Milan is like the business city of Italy, so it was easy for me. I already had some friends that had done something there, and they helped me as basically advisors. And that's what I did. It was a very nice experience. It was my first, I would say, startup during COVID. And then I put this in standby to learn more and refocus on synthetic biology in San Francisco.
And maybe in the future, you have plans to maybe retake that startup or maybe to implement a new one, or for now, you're not thinking about that?
It was a very exciting experience, I have to say. So, I'm always thinking about how to make a new one, potentially through innovative technologies, because that one was very nice. It was, of course, it was filling a gap. There were not creative agency about science in Italy, but we weren't providing innovative services. While we weren't starting from innovative tools. What I learned in these 2 years in Silicon Valley is that if you want to be really successful in the space, you need to start from something that is also technological innovative, either technological innovative or with a very innovative business plan. So I think that if I go back in the startup world, it will be either through a competitive, innovative technology or through a competitive, let's say, creative, a new kind of business plan. For sure, it's something that I'm considering, of course. In this phase of my life, I'm more focusing on synthetic biology as an academic guy. In the future, I'm potentially interested also in the startup space. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, what tips would you give to people that want to convey technical knowledge into a more general way and easy to other people to understand? Because it's in the medical field, but also in the tech field, maybe in the also
Absolutely.
startup world.
Absolutely.
Each have their
So,
ways of expressing things.
yeah, for sure. So that really goes back to what we were doing at Nabu Creative Studio. So if you saw that our logo was like there was a microscope, which was the scientific part, and then there was a pencil brush, which was the visual aspect of it, and then there was a third element, which were the wings. For us, the wings were the marketing, the broadcasting. So I would say that if you want to deliver effectively a new scientific or technological concept, as you said, not just in biotech, even in AI, this kind of new large language model and whatever, quantum in the future, you need to start from knowing what you're talking about. That's very important, because if you are not really reliable in what you are telling, and if you start to say something that's not accurate enough, this will damage your reputation and also the confidence, not just you, but also the confidence that people have in science. It's very important that you talk about what you know, either because you studied it or because you spent some months reading books and talking with experts. So that's really the first part, the concept. But then there's another point. You cannot just rely on the concept. You really need to go visual. Visual storytelling is something very important. People in the art field know that. People in the science tech field, they don't seem so much aware of this usually. It's very important because our brain has been evolved by watching images and also by learning through telling stories. Our ancestors, all the great mythology, is based on stories, basic characters, and it's also based on great images. It's one of the first way we communicated, and this is still implemented in our brain. So if you want to explain a very difficult topic, you need to go through images, nice images, aesthetically nice image. You need to partner with artists or people that know how to do that, and also storytelling. You need to tell concept through stories because that's how our brain has been evolved to work. It's very
And what is the
important.
most effective mean to do that in today's world?
Yeah, I would say I'm starting for fun to play with AI too. I mean, AI can really streamline potentially the entertainment industry. So animation, we can start to do animation with AI. I would say animation, something that is dynamic. It's very important if we want to convey scientific concept. Also, because most of these kind of biotechnologies is something that is a dynamic process. As I was told you before, you have a cell, you deliver the DNA, then the cell go in, for instance, in the brain, finds there's a tumor and needs to attack. So it's a complex topic. And I would say animation is very good because it's dynamic. And again, I think AI is something to consider, both for people like me that I'm not an animator, so for me it's a easier way to approach the thing, but also for artists. So in Silicon Valley, a lot of artists, people that work for very big traditional companies, they are aware that even for them it's important to learn these tools, not because this tool will replace them. The creativity, human creativity will always be important, but because if an artist learn how to use this tool, everything will be faster. And not just faster. Last weekend, actually, I went to LA. I attended a conference with the designer of the DeLorean car in Back to the Future. And he told us that even him is learning AI and is finding out that AI is not just a tool for him, but is also helping him to explore things. If you prompt well AI will give you something that you have never even thought about. So it gives you another option for your kind of scene and actually can further boost and fuel your creativity.
Even in podcasting, right? Like I remember before, like starting the podcast, you're mentioning the interview
Yeah,
of like Lex Friedman, right? That he
yeah,
was
yeah.
like able to
Yes,
modify the accent of the Prime Minister of India.
exactly. Yes. Even in podcast, in journalism. So I think I think we are very lucky that we live here and we can see these kind of things some months before other people. So that's another advantage to be Silicon Valley. I would say one of the advantages of Silicon Valley is also this kind of hacking mentality. So one thing that I find very useful here are hackathons. Hackathons are basically yeah.
I thought
Hackathons
we
are
were yes, we're going to say that because you participated at hackathon of on artificial generative intelligence,
yeah.
and so we were curious to know what like what did you do and why you believe that was important.
And maybe
Okay,
why
yeah.
you're so passionate about doing hackathons.
Yeah, so hackathons is something that I would say it's one of the, I don't know if Eric, you agree, I think it's one of the main things to do in San Francisco. San Francisco,
Yeah, there are
especially,
so many every single week.
yeah, every weekend
Did you
you can,
have an hackathon?
sorry?
No, I was asking to Eric if he has done an hackathon before or not
Okay.
there.
I mean, when at the moment, no, because it's good when you're kind of like in exploration mode, stuff like that. At the moment, I'm kind of like heads down on the startup, so I'm not like doing hackathons anymore. But it's
Mhm.
cool because also for networking, many of them are kind of organized by companies, so you get to know a lot of like other engineers, other founders. So I
Exactly.
think for that is very, very cool.
Exactly. It's a way
Alessandro, you
basically,
were you were in exploration mode. So if you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
maybe
I'm
share.
always on I'm always in exploration mode. But maybe because I'm a researcher, so like exploration is like what we do at our job. I would say also by personality, I've always been in this kind of exploration mode. So coming back to your question, what is an hackathon? An hackathon is like an event. It can be 2 to 3 hours. Sometimes it can be one full day. Sometimes it can be a full weekend in which there is a basically a team. For instance, the last hackathon I attended is how can we design AI tools or product for Valentine's Day, because it was the 14th of February. So basically, there's a general team, and then you basically can partner with people with completely different background from you. Usually, there are three kind of people. There are AI guys, so people that really are very good at programming. Then there are product people. There are people that have done product design in their life, so they don't know how to code, but they know what kind of things people and customers would love. And then there are general researchers, so people that are interested in general in concept, in exploring concepts. And that's, for instance, in my case, if I go for like Valentine Day, clearly I'm not a developer and I'm not a person that is a product designer for dating, this kind of stuff, but I'm interested in general in learning concept. If I go in hackathons for bio, in that case, I'm the guy that knows the concept. So for me, and not just for me, in general, hackathon is an opportunity to know people that have skills different from yours. And these people potentially one day could be your partners or could be people that work with you or can be your advisors. It's like a way to make networking with people that are interesting to explore new stuff. In hackathon, you explore new stuff, you develop prototypes of new products, or can be also a way to learn about technology. So what's the latest model? And maybe you will not do that thing for datings. Maybe you will do this for bio. So it's also a learning thing. It's
There
learning
is
and
a
networking.
there is a huge one at Stanford that is called like 3 Up that I think happened last month, and there were like some fellows that actually team up and like came here to Silicon Valley from Europe and very
Yeah,
far away to spend a few days here, and yeah, it was very cool, and also for them like meet new people, maybe
yeah,
potential co-founders, like
yeah.
yeah, potential
In order to
partners.
participate, like you need your own team, or
You
they're
Not
find
at
choosing
all.
random.
Not at all. So there are some people that already have a team and maybe use the hackathon as a way to test new prototypes of what they're building. There are other people, like sometimes me, that we don't have team. We go there and you create a team there. It's a very fast process because sometimes you just have 3 hours to make a prototype. So it's happening very fast, but it's also very nice because there's also the dinner all together, the prize moment. It's a nice experience. It's not
There are also like monetary prizes, right? In some cases, like maybe an object or a
yeah,
product of the company that is sponsoring, but in some cases there are also like monetary prizes. Indeed, there is
yeah,
like a fellow that basically finances this trip to Silicon Valley, like the flights, accommodation,
yeah,
and everything, partially also with
yeah.
prizes from
Or
from hackathons.
or sometimes maybe there's a company that is sponsoring and the winner gets free credits to use the AI tool of that company. So yeah.
Excellent. A friend of mine actually also got an offer from like the company that was
Oh,
sponsoring
okay.
the hackathon. So
Okay. Okay. That's good.
What is the most interesting thing that you've learned there? Something that you didn't expect and it made you realize something from that
I think uh,
experience?
I think what I learned there was more like the mindset. So really that in 3 hours, sometimes in 3 hours you can really deliver a very nice prototype. So for instance, in the last hackathon that I was able to attend, there was this company. It's not a company; it's like a prototype of a company. It's called Resilience AI. They were in basically in I would say in 3 hours they developed a prototype of AI therapist, mental therapist. Of course, it's just a prototype, but it's very exciting the idea that in 3 hours you can really think about a problem and come up with a seed. It's just a seed, of course, but it's very encouraging. So that's what I learned, like this kind of positive mentality, exploratory mentality. Yeah.
And also there are some demos that are quite impressive, right?
Yes.
There was the one that you were mentioning about like the voice
Yeah, there's
negotiation for like
yeah.
deals.
There was another one that I didn't attend, but I have friends who attended. Basically, in again, I would say in a few hours, if I remember well, they developed a tool which is like an AI negotiator for sales. So basically, and how the prototype was, they called a shop in which they sell sofa, couch, and basically the AI was talking with the owner of the shop, negotiating the price of the sofa, of the couch. But the thing is, the owner of the shop didn't know that that was AI. He couldn't realize because the AI was so sophisticated, both in terms of reasoning, asking questions, answering, negotiating, and also the voice was so accurate that it was impossible for the owner to understand that he was talking with AI.
Yeah, like
And
the
that,
Turing test was like passed,
yeah, it was
absolutely.
fast. They were able to negotiate 50% discount on the sofa, so I think it was good.
And it was sponsored by 11 Labs, this one,
11
or
Labs, yes.
okay, that
Yeah,
is one
which
of
are
like the
the
fastest
top,
growing companies also
yes.
here in AI.
Maybe like if you can elenk three skills that are required in order to be successful during an hackathon.
Like I said, the first is you have to be fast because you don't have a lot of time to develop your project. The second thing is really understand what's a missing problem there, which kind of gaps there are, which other products are not addressing, what could be a really interesting product for the customer. And the third thing is how the technologies, because there's always sometimes there's also restrictions. So we want to do an hackathon that addressed a problem, a specific problem with a specific model, for instance LLM. So you also need to understand which kind of technology can really help in addressing the problem. And then the final thing is also team working, because usually you don't
Yeah, I
work by
was
yourself.
thinking about that. Like,
Yeah,
how can you be fast but at the same time
with people
be
that you don't know, because sometimes the team is composed by people that you have never spoke before, and that's what a lot of time there's failure. Sometimes there are people that are really brilliant, but they don't have, I would say, the skills to work in team.
Interact
So
maybe with others to make a
yes,
group team.
yes,
Can you
yes,
tell
yes.
us an example of a moment in which there was something, maybe some tension about the members of the team and
So I attended an hackathon about AI for digital media, so how to produce animation, again in a few hours. What happened was in that team there were two people that they were big experts already. So one was a big expert in I would say in product design for animation, and another one was a big expert in like creative direction. He's like a director basically here in the Bay. But they had a different, so they're two experts but with completely different ideas about what they should deliver. And basically we spent the first half of the time just to see this kind of fighting that wasn't going nowhere. And then at the end we didn't have enough time to do the rest, and even at the end was still clear that they were doing things differently. So that's a general thing that, I mean, it's just about the hackathon in general, in life, in any job you do. You just not, you don't just need to be an expert in what you're doing, but you also need to, and it's a learning process, being also to work in team.
Maybe another important aspects about like the Silicon Valley and kind of like a peculiarity of like being here is the strong collaboration between also like research, so academia
Yeah,
and companies like startups. And then in
absolutely.
particular, even in the recent years, there's been a lot of interest from, I don't know, Jeff Bezos, the Collison brothers, like the founders of Stripe, that are putting a lot of like investments into research into aging, like longevity, cancer research. Like maybe
Yeah,
can you give us a little bit of an overview? What are the most
abs-
interesting projects, and if you
absolutely.
collaborated with some of
Ab-
those?
Absolutely. So, just to give you an idea, UCSF, University of California, San Francisco, where I'm working now as a postdoc, is the university in which 90% of the recombinant insulin was invented. So the not just the idea, really the first drug, the first recombinant insulin. Recombinant insulin is what people use to treat diabetes. Everyone knows about that in the world. It was invented in my university by researchers and professors that were pure academic people. But then what they invented was so important as a pharmaceutical that then gave birth to Genentech, which is now a very big company in the biotech space. So for sure in UCSF, and I would say not just UCSF, fortunately also in Italy, something is moving so far, even from my previous university. So more and more, there's the capacity of academia to discover or invent new drugs, new technologies that can become at first startups, small startups, and then grow to become big companies. One thing that I noticed here in the US, especially UCSF, but I would say also in Boston, the Boston area is great too for this, is a lot of professors, even a lot of professors that have a lot of experience, they are also involved in startups. Because what happens is you have your own lab as an academic professor, and then you invent something, and then you license the patent for this to make a company in which usually these professors are still involved as co-founders or also or in the advisory board. So in the US, it's really easier to translate what you identified in your academic lab into a company and a startup. So that's the first thing. The other thing I noticed is here, especially at UCSF, there's a program which is called UCSF Innovation Ventures, which teach to younger researchers, not just professors, to younger research, how, okay, you found this, you have an idea, or even you already made a discovery. It's great, you published a paper in Nature, Science, so for sure this is incredible in terms of scientific innovation. But then what's the next step? Are you interested in developing a company out of this? If yes, you need other skills. You need some kind of strategic skills, business skills, and you can learn these skills. Of course, it's also interesting and important to partner with people that are expert in this, but some kind of universities such as UCSF also are providing to researchers tools to learn these skills step by step. Is very important, and it's very encouraging for young researchers. Yeah.
Did you find it useful? Like, what specifically did you do after taking these courses? How did you maybe make a shift like from
I'm
before what you're doing
Yes,
after?
I found this course very useful, and it was useful for two reasons. One is again the networking, because these courses are taught by not just by professors but also by the researchers, and then they made their own startups. So I start to then get in connection with them. So it was good for me as a networking, because I know that if one day I need a specific question, I have a specific question, I know already who I could talk with. And then for the other thing, for me, it was very interesting to reanalyze what I've done so far, or potentially what I will do in the future, through the lenses of not just about the science, but also about, is this thing addressing a real problem, not just scientific, but also in terms of product. What's the limitation of this in terms of developing a product that is like also sustainable, financially sustainable, scalable? It's very important also to scale in startups. So like it put inside me kind of reasoning pattern in which I would start to analyze what I'm doing, not just from the science perspective for which I was trained, but also from, I would say, the business and product perspective. Because sometimes you can have very innovative and very complex things that you discover and then could easily go to top scientific journals. But maybe sometimes this complexity could harm in the terms of product development, because maybe it becomes too costly or too regulated. Maybe sometimes you have, on the other hand, something which is scientifically simpler as a discovery, but the fact that it's simpler also make it easier to translate into a product, both from like the cost of the manufacturing, which is a big thing in biotech, but also about the regulation. So yeah.
In the case in which it's not possible, maybe to make that discovery, build a startup in that case, what happens? Like, does the discovery remain there, or are there other ways in which researchers or doctors like you, could do
Yeah.
that research
So
feasible?
yeah, that's a very important question. So I would say there are two things that can happen. One is, okay, I've made this discovery, I've made this invention. And this invention has some complexity layers that now make it difficult this to become a product. So one thing that you can ask is, how can you make this thing simpler, or how can you address this complexity? And then from there, you might start to make some other kind of research, which is still sometimes scientific and technical research, to, let's say, slow down, or let's say remove this kind of complexity layer. So you find out that what you've done so far is good, but it's just the first step, and then there are other steps that you need to tackle in order to make it sustainable. That's one thing. The other option is this kind of thing that you've made, maybe potentially today is not easy to, let's say, make a startup out of it, but then you can still keep an eye open. And then, for instance, if there is a new tool that makes the developed by completely another person that makes the biomanufacturing process easier, then you can start to partner in the future with that person and work together. So that's the second option, which is the second layer. You need to wait a bit more. Then sometimes there's a fair situation in which you just need to be honest and say, okay, that was a great scientific discovery. It's very important because, I mean, a lot of technology starts from academia, from research project, not because of any kind of monetization interest, just for pure sake of knowledge. So I made this discovery. Is there? Let's go ahead and I mean, be honest that maybe it's not a good thing to make a startup of, but it's still super valuable because it still put, let's say, a step forward the knowledge, for instance, in things like cancer. It can be also a reference for other people that will cite your work and will compare what they've done with what you have done. So I mean, it's still very valuable also like this.
Is there some particular project in particular that you are super excited or very interested about? I mean, there is Brian Johnson, of course, probably expanding a couple of millions on like his lifestyle. Then there is the Arc Institute with the Collison
Yeah.
brothers, like Jeff Bezos, also like
Yeah.
building companies in this field.
Yeah. I would say that what I'm working so far is more like technology. So we are again trying to put a bit more of code on our cells to make them more programmable. And that's the thing what I'm working now. It's really the technological layer. And I think that this kind of technology that we are developing really in the future could have very different applications, from cancer immunotherapy to neurodegeneration, regenerative medicine of different kind of organs. So I would say now I'm more focused on the technological development. Yeah, but it's true what you were saying before, that I mean, another advantage of being in Silicon Valley, and I have to say not just Silicon Valley, I also think that also the Boston area is very good in this. It's like you have a lot of interest also from billionaires to put at least some of their money on something that can save potentially lives, maybe their own lives potentially. They want to live longer, also life of other people. So there's also this kind of idea of philanthropy, which is very important in
Yeah.
the US. A lot of billionaires think that they need to give back something to the world, and are putting also a lot of money for, also sometimes also for allowing people like me, young researcher, to work in the US by providing postdoctoral fellowships. So they really work on different level, either by providing grants, resources, or, as you said, by backing companies to, let's say, aging is really something they are very interested in usually.
It has ever happened that maybe a billionaire or someone like had specific requests, like for researchers to implement, and yes, some maybe more, yes, specific ones, and you had to maybe do that because they give you the money and the fundings?
Yeah, so it never happened to me because so far I worked in academia, which is like usually curiosity driven. So, but yes, as Eric was mentioning, there are some companies that have been founded by this kind of billionaires, specific with a project, with a goal. For instance, aging. We want to find let's say, strategies to live 120 years, for instance. And then all the research in that kind of company is structured to address that specific goal. So there's a
But
clear goal.
are there any
Sorry?
advancements on this topic?
Yes, yes, yes. There are a lot of advancements in the aging field. There are people working to tackle it from different kind of ways. Either can be a metabolic way, so how actually our metabolites can really slow down aging. There's also another very interesting thing, which is the kind of thinking about rejuvenation. So how can you take an old cells and then deliver in the cells either kind of small molecules or sometimes genes that could rejuvenate this, and some companies are working on this too. So yeah, there's a lot of advancement happening in Silicon Valley about this, sure.
But, like I had a curiosity, like maybe when you have like a new project and you discover something new, but then you see that you can continue with that project, like that stays inside maybe the university or the lab, or you publish that, so in order that also other researchers can implement those, or how does it work?
Okay. Yeah. So there's a distinction between academia and companies. So in academia, which is where I work so far, it's very important the articles of publishing. So if you have a nice result that really brings forward, puts a little piece or a big piece in the knowledge advancement, it's very important to publish it. And so we also want to publish, because publish. So in academia, there's this kind of motto, which is publish or perish, meaning that your career advancement really depends on publishing. So we researchers are the first that want to publish what we invent and discover. So yes, usually if you have something that is exciting, that is truly innovative, you publish it, and that's the first way to make everyone aware of it. And then again, if it's just a discovery, because we are talking, where our conversation here is more being focused about biotech, but then there's also another way of doing science, which is discovery. So you don't invent maybe a new medicine, but you discover a new molecular mechanism that is the reason for cancer. If you discover this, so this is like the distinction between science and technology. You can do research for technology, so you invent something new, or you can do research for science, which means like I discover a new event, a new molecular medicine, a new molecular mechanism behind cancer or behind Alzheimer. And these are super valuable things too, because once you understand what's the mechanism, then you can design a drug to address this. So a lot of the drugs that we have, we use them because some people before us understood what's the molecular mechanism to be targeted. So that's super important too. And in that case, usually it's at least at the beginning, it's just a scientific paper. So yes, I would say if you in academia, and also not just in academia, still also companies nowadays are starting to publish in their own results. So usually if you have some good result, you publish it, and that's the first way. And then again, there's a distinction between, is it just a paper or can it be also a new technology or a new startup?
Do you need there's a need of maybe more need of some innovation ventures, or maybe companies that are specifically targeted to help researchers to make their research become businesses? Because maybe some people could argue that this making the research a business then could prevent from continuing evolving in the research
Yeah,
field. So
that's a very important that's a very important ethical aspect that you are considering here. So I would say that at least at UCSF, but not just UCSF, also in San Raffaele TGET, which was my institute in Milan. There's already inside the university an office which is called Tech Transfer Office, which has really this kind of purpose. So to help scientists to understand how to translate what they discovered into a potential startup. So in the past it wasn't like this. In the past you needed like partnership with other kind of consultant outside of your university that help you understand this thing. Nowadays university already have this kind of important people inside. So that's one aspect. The importance of the tech transfer office is fundamental. And then what you said before, I would say that's the reason why it's still very important that there are academic research should be alive and should be preserved as a treasure, because it's very important that you still have some non-profit organization like academia that make discoveries, even not because of profits, but just because there are people that are interested in understanding more how science works, understand more what's the reason of a disease, not because they want to make a company. And that's very important, because if we don't understand what's the reason of a disease, we will never understand how to cure it. And that's where really academia should be preserved. We should all have as a citizens, not just me as a scientist, any citizen in any part of the world should consider to do its best effort to drive political and strategic decision to maintain academia alive. It's very important.
And like, did you found any differences in the approach in Italy and there in the US on how maybe they work? And yes, maybe this.
Yeah, there are big differences. So I would say that I've been lucky to work again at San Raffaele Teleton Institute for Gene Therapy, who's one of the main director. He worked himself as a postdoc in the US before coming back to Italy. So he brought back to Italy this kind of US mentality. So I would say that I already had learned a bit of it through my studies at San Raffaele, but for sure in general, if I have to consider not just my personal experience, but the experience of all the other people that I've met in Italy and the people that I've met here, I would say that there are two main differences, which are also correlated, I would say. One is more the kind of mentality thing. So, especially in the US, I'm talking about Silicon Valley because that's the main place where I work, but maybe Eric he will add more then. I would say the main thing here is the positive and optimistic mindset. So people here really think that if they work hard, they can solve problems that other people have never solved in the past. They can make new discoveries, they can make new companies. So this kind of optimism that really energizes you and motivates you. I would say Italy is very, very good in terms of education. I would say honestly that education level that me and other peers have got is really incredible. Same level what I find here. But what I think a bit lacks is this kind of optimistic mentality, which can seem like a simple thing, but actually it's very important. So it's undervalued the importance of having like the right mindset, being optimistic that you can do that. That's the first thing, the big difference. And then the other thing is also, and I think they are correlated honestly, is like in Italy, before you start to do something, yourself and also other people really need to show to yourself and other people that you learned a lot, and after you learn all these things, now it's the right time to do this other thing because you have done a lot of education about that. While here, I see a lot of people with really, really low level experience that are put in so complicated project that in Italy would never happen. And but by doing this, they learn faster because they are put in this kind of problem-solving situation in which they do something even before having all the kind of theoretical skills to approach it. It's a big different approach. In Italy, we work by we really take care a lot about education, and then after we have learned a lot, then we do stuff. Here, people do stuff, complicated stuff, even with very, very basic level education. And this first, of course, the failure rate can be higher because sometimes you don't have the right skills, but then during the process, you learn how to do this kind of stuff. I think that's the
Even
main.
in the undergrad, right, is not
Yeah.
common, but of course is incentivized to start doing research in the
Yes,
undergrad
yes. There are
level,
people.
doing internships during the summer. So
Absolutely. So, for instance, I've heard about a person that she told me, "Oh, I did my bachelor, and then I went in a company, and then this company told me to take care about this robot, but I've never studied robotics in my life." She's a biologist. So, like, they literally told me, "Okay, if this is your first day, you will be responsible of taking care of this robot." And she has never taken care of a robot in her life, but she learned to do that. I think that's the kind of mindset that a bit lacks a bit in Italy. I have to say that, I want to say a very good thing about Italy is, again, I want to stress this point about the education. I think really the education that we get in Italy, not just scientifically, but culturally, it's really, I would say, very, very high level, and we should be proud about this.
Thank you very much. Like, last question about also, if you had an infinite funding, what research experiment would you run tomorrow? Or would you focus on having all this very varied background between technical skills, also communication?
Also, maybe combining all this way of being creative.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, for sure. I think what I'm working now is really important. So how to develop better algorithms for cells. I think this is something that is really, really, really important, and I can have different kind of applications. So I'm okay with what I'm doing now and continue on doing this. So if there are more funds for this, I would be happy for that. And then I think also, I mean, the AI can really, so we're in a situation in which AI, in some ways, for information, can be good or bad. I mean, it could boost also fake news, unfortunately. So I think that's another thing that it's very important, how to use AI to how to check AI in some ways, and to push us toward the information, and to let's say, yes, fact checking. I would say it's another very, very important thing, a bit
Yes, in fact,
undervalued.
yes, also about the use of AI for medical purposes, for example,
Yes.
for doctor assistant. Nowadays there are lots of projects on this topic. But what do you think about also the ethical concerns behind? Because you said that people could also like AI has vulnerabilities. So when how to draw the line between being completely like following completely what the AI says, and at the same time maintain also the own judgment about medicine, which is a science that not a lot of people know. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So no, this is very important thing. I think we need to find ways. So biomedical expert needs to learn about AI for sure, and also they need to learn how to communicate well with like-minded AI expert to, like, first of all, to reduce the kind of errors that I can do. AI is a super novel thing, so as any tool in the first years can have some kind of technical errors. For instance, we can talk about hallucination. Sometimes you prompt AI and it will give you a wrong answer just because there's a technical error there or a training error. So training AI in a better way to give you the best answer. That's one thing that I think it's easier to solve. Then the most difficult thing is to make sure that the AI is always in the hands of the right people. And then in that ways comes a bit of politics there. So again, as a citizen, we need also to think about these things. So I think we don't need to be against AI because AI is a new tool that can really scale up and make things faster and easier, and also can open us some new trajectory that we can even think about now. So it's a very good thing that we need to deal with. But on the other hand, we need to both work on the AI and works from the political side to be sure that the AI is always in the right hands of the right people. And yes, and also potentially train AI to fact check itself, like a tool that can autocorrect itself. I would say that would be a very
What about
interesting
like
thing.
human check? Is important also to have humans that actually make their part and complete the accuracy of the information
Yeah, yeah.
from.
Absolutely. So that's what I was referring to when saying that we, as citizens, we have not just the right, but also, well, I would say the obligation to think about these kind of problems. There's also the concept of the copilot. We don't need to rely just on AI. We still have a brain, and we still need to put value on our education, not just to learn AI, but sometimes to fact check it. And also, again, talking with experts to really improve these kind of tools and not be passive, being active in that. But to being active in these kind of things, you really need to study them, because when you talk with an expert, you really need to show this kind of person that you know what you're talking about. So I think we really need also to improve a lot our education level.
Yes, you're talking about knowledge. So, what about now if you give us some resources, like for young people to be inspired, or if you have any objects or something that really represents you and you want to share with the public?
Okay, yeah. So I would say I really start from podcast. Honestly, lately they're just for relaxing myself, and then from there I always try to create myself in finding podcast from reliable sources and reliable authors, and then from there, if I find an interest topic, I really then go to books. And again, from a general book, I go to the more like precise and more academic kind of papers. So you can really build your knowledge from scratch. Again, for instance, Elon Musk always says, I read a lot of books in my life. So you can learn everything if you put a lot of efforts in doing that. So really, you can educate yourself, or you can then start to speak with people that are expert on this. So in terms of resources, I would say this kind of stuff. So start from something which is more entertainment wise, which can be a video or then a podcast, then go to a general book about your topic, and then start to go maybe to more technical kind of
Example,
articles and papers.
a podcast that was inspirational for you, for example, in general, or something that inspired you, or in your scientific part of life, and the other more business and startupper.
Yeah, so usually I don't have a precise one. I really float
You're random.
from one thing to the other. Yes, and also I, since I mean I'm from Italy, I sometimes I focus also in Italian podcasts just to feel myself more at home. In terms of books, if you're interested into evaluating your kind of startup idea. One of my favorite books, maybe I brought here because I didn't know how this kind of conversation today would go. So I bought
You got
something
a book.
that will represent. Yes, yes.
So which
This is,
one?
I mean, I don't want to do some kind of advertising here,
Ah,
but
Please do.
cool.
this is
Yes.
0 to 1. It's
It's
really a,
also part of our onboarding guide when like we
yeah,
onboard new
from,
people on Gomri, like
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
they
yeah,
need
yeah,
to read some books and that
yeah,
like
yeah.
Peter Thiel, of course, is one of the grandmasters of Silicon Valley
Yeah,
startup
in that
scene.
book, it really gives you a really, really important and solid idea of what should be the really key elements of building something successful. Again, in the book, he focuses about startup, but honestly, I find out that a lot of these kind of concepts are also true also in biomedical research. So it's a book about startup, but I would say it's a book in general about the right mindset to do research.
There is also, I think, a really good one correlated on YouTube, like a speech that Peter Thiel did at Stanford that is about competition is for losers.
Yes.
It's kind of a little bit provocative.
Yeah,
As always, but
I think I saw that like
fine.
5 times. So yes, yes. And yeah, maybe so another thing I brought it's this T-shirt from my favorite team, Roma. It's with the signature of Francesco Totti himself. I went to Any Sign for Me, and I brought this because I think it's very instrumental to have. I think it's very important to have some kind of models, which can be, in my case, has always been people, creative people. So he was like one of the most creative players in the history of Italy. And I think if I need to go back in all my kind of career decisions, I always try to work with people that have two kind of characteristics in the same person: creativity and also being a bit tough. So I've always tried to work with people that are very brilliant, but also have like a very not super kind mentality, which puts you to do your best, work hard, have deadlines. Because sometimes you find very creative people, which are also very nice. Sometimes you find tough people, which are not creative. If you find a mentor that has both, I think you grow both in terms of opening your brain, more creative, but also in terms
Bring
of
your most potential.
professionality. Yeah.
It could bring you the most potential out of you. I think
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
really, Alessandro. Thank you very
was a
much.
really
Thank you
great
for having me.
conversation.
It was a pleasure.
Yes,
It was my first podcast, so I will remember this.
it was amazing conversation. I think you'll inspire a lot of people because we are here like to convey messages, to convey life journeys, and I believe this one is
Incredible.
yes, exactly.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Very
it.
much.
Thank you for the questions. Bye. See you.